Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new here. I'm Christine, and I was recently doing a little bit of organizing of my Notion drawers, as well as I have a kind of a rolly plastic container underneath my cutting table where I store a lot of my sewing notions and gadgets and tools. And I was kind of shifting things around because there are a few things that I just find that I don't really use that much. So I figured I would share those and kind of a little bit about why I don't use them, as well as a few tools that I absolutely cannot live without that I use all the time. And today I'm wearing my Essex dress, which is one of my patterns. This is the puff sleeve version, elastic waist, so it's just a pullover style with pockets, of course. And this one I had made from a duvet cover. Yeah, I started with the weather getting warmer. My Essex dresses are definitely in heavy rotation. I have a couple solid ones, I have a couple print ones, viscose cotton, and really just love this pattern. The first sewing gadget that I just don't ever use are these little magnetic seam gauges. So these are magnetized on the back, and you can just place them on the throat plate of your machine using the magnet and create a guide for your fabric to follow along to get an even stitching line. So in theory, I think these are great, but I think that they really only work if you're using heavy duty fabric, like home deck fabric, upholstery, heavy denim, maybe doing even like leather or handbag work. But for me, for my light cottons, viscose, the fabric just kind of, instead of following along, it kind of then rolls upwards. And for me, for the hand-eye coordination, it causes an additional job, so to speak, for my eyes and my, the coordination to get the fabric to follow along. I find that it's much easier if I just place a temporary piece of masking tape along the line that I want to follow. And for me, that is much more accurate. The next sewing gadget is actually more of a tool that I wish I could use, but I just find myself that I don't. And that is my electric rotary blade cutter. So this is by the brand Texie, which I love the brand. I love that this is cordless. It has a battery pack here in the back. It has a nice, strong rotary blade. But again, kind of like the magnetized things, I find that this really is great for heavy duty fabric, or if you're cutting, let's say 5 of one piece and you have a lot of thickness, this is really great. But I find for every day, for my cottons and viscose and lightweight cottons that I sew with a lot, it's just a little bit of an overkill. It's much too heavy duty, and it's a little heavy in the hand to just easily kind of cut around small spaces. So unfortunately, I just don't use this as much as I wish I could. I have seen around Instagram some of these electric cutters that are really not a lot bigger than your normal rotary cutter. And I think those would be really interesting to try. So maybe I would try one of the smaller versions in the future. The next sewing notion that I rarely ever use is my walking foot attachment for my sewing machine. So I've only ever used this one time, and that was when I was sewing with faux leather. And in that case, it was a dream. I was so glad I had it then. But for my day-to-day sewing, I just don't use it. And one of the reasons why is because it's rather clunky. And so the attachment itself makes a lot of kind of clunky noise as you're sewing with it. And I believe it's just the mechanism, the walking foot mechanism, that kind of creates that clunkiness. So day to day, it's just not something that I use. So the sewing machine that I learned to sew on was a FAF 1475, which has a walking foot built in to the machine. And I think this is really awesome. I would love to have a machine with a built-in walking foot that you could just engage or disengage. So that's kind of the dream. The walking foot attachment, not so much. The next sewing notion that I rarely ever use are these turners. So these are really designed for when you're turning, for example, spaghetti straps or anything that is a really small, narrow tube that you want to turn right side out. These have the little hook mechanism that you kind of hook through your fabric and then secure it with that little bar, and then you can turn the fabric right side out using the little, the little tube feature. And for me, what happens, I don't know why, maybe I'm not using them correctly, but I usually find that my fabric, when I hook my fabric in, and I'm usually midway through turning it inside out, to be honest, it rips my fabric. The fabric kind of just pulls away from the loop, and then I'm stuck turning it right side out and starting over, and it ends up being a little bit more trouble than it's worth. So when I do spaghetti straps, I use the thread method, where you take a thread and you secure it on one end, and you use the thread to turn, for the leverage to turn your spaghetti strap inside out. The next sewing gadget that I just never use are these large clips. So you might have heard me talking about the little clips that I absolutely love and use a lot. These are the about 1/2 inch wide or long clips. So these are the, I would say maybe 1.25 inch long clips. And these I just never use, because you clip your fabric here on the clippy part, and then you have all this extra part that's just kind of flapping around. And so it adds additional weight. It can also fall off because it's kind of flapping around. So these large clips, unfortunately, kind of hang out in the back of my Notion drawer. The next sewing gadget that I just don't use as it is made for is my mannequin. So I love her. I think she's just so pretty. I love the color. But unfortunately, there's a couple things about this mannequin that I just aren't really practical. And one of them is the size. So even though I have the general measurements set to my own measurements, there are areas of the mannequin that are just not quite realistic to a 45-year-old's body, I would say, and mostly in the chest area. There's a lot of bulk here from the armhole to the her chest, and I just don't have any fullness in this upper chest area, and especially even around the neck, the shoulders, there's a lot of fullness. So even though the exact bust measurement is equal to my own, I've set it to my own measurement, the other parts of the dress form are just not, they don't fit like my own body. The other thing about this mannequin, and this is something if you're thinking about buying one, definitely checking the fit of it. But second, it's hard underneath. So you can't pin directly in. You kind of have to pin, sort of just pinning through this top layer, which is not very secure. So you can't really pin on this. So ultimately, I just use it as kind of a display, place to put a work in progress as I'm working on it. Basically, it boils down to it's just another hanger and a bit of decoration for my sewing space. Okay, now I would love to share a couple sewing tools that I absolutely do love. And the first is this little point turner gadget. So you could use this for turning out the points of any collars or any 90-degree angles that you want nice and sharp. You have this pointed end, and it's pointy, but it's also soft. It's just rounded to the perfect amount. So you're not punching out the corner, but you're getting a nice crisp point. The other thing that I use this sometimes on is right on in my machine. You can kind of use the point to maybe work out any puckers or help you keep the fabric taut. It's almost like an extra finger that you can get really close to your needle without having to worry about, getting your own finger in there. So this is a really handy tool. The brand is SewMate, and I'll definitely drop a link to a similar one below. I highly recommend this. Super inexpensive, but really, really, I love, love, love having this. The other gadget you might have heard me talk about, because I feel like I talk about it all the time, are these embroidery duckbill scissors. So I use these all the time when I'm sewing clothes, and mostly when I'm doing grading of seams. So the beauty of this is the duckbill holds a second layer of fabric away from the blade, and so you don't have to worry about accidentally nicking your fabric as you're trimming the layers. This also works beautifully when you're working with laces or lingerie, any kind of slinky, silky fabric. It works really, really well. So these also are not massively expensive, and I feel that they definitely You know, they work for their salary. These embroidery scissors, I would definitely recommend having a pair in your stash, especially if you're sewing clothes. The next notion that I absolutely love having is new to me, and these are these pins by the brand TaylorMade. So I actually got these at Sew Expo. I had never heard of the brand before, but these pins have literally taken front row out of all my other pins. So these are I believe these are the silk pin weight. So they have many different sizes, and all the different sizes have different colors of the head of the pin. So I believe these are the silk pins. They're very fine. The pin itself is about maybe like an inch long, so they're not very long, which for me, this is really, really nice for any kind of cottons, viscose, lightweight fabrics that I generally sew with. They are just really nice and exact and easy to handle. This is a non-meltable plastic, so you can, accidentally run over them with your iron if you do. I really, really love these pins. I think that they're high quality, really, really nice to use. And so, yeah, I'm so glad I have these. I would definitely recommend getting some. I think that I would actually like to get some of the other sizes as well, just to have in my stash. Next up is a really simple thing. I don't know where I learned about it, but it is spray starch. So, oh my gosh, I have to have a bottle of spray starch next to my iron. So I use this as I'm preparing my fabric. If you have like a stubborn crease on the fold line of your fabric, you can use spray starch, and it literally just will take those lines right out. Any wrinkles. Also, if you have fabric that needs a little bit of stability, like a really fine cotton viscose, I'll use spray starch just around the cut edges to give it a little bit of stability. Also, if you have knits that roll, sometimes you'll cut your knit and then the edges will roll. And it's such a nightmare to sew when you're trying to manage and wrangle the curly edges. You can spray starch the edges, and it literally keeps your knits flat. So many different uses, as well as just final pressing your garment. You can get a really nice, crisp, professional look with spray starch. So again, not even expensive. Love, love, love using spray starch. So I would love to hear from you below if you have any of your own favorite gadgets that I should check out and everyone else to check out. And thank you so, so, so much for watching. I will see you next time. All right, bye.